Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, and today it is time for my October TBR, and if you couldn't tell, things are gonna get a little bit spooky. So obviously I'm gonna try to be reading a ton of horror / spooky books, with one exception, so I will get through that one first, and then we will get to all of the spooky books I plan on reading for the month. So the first book that I plan on reading is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and my gosh, that title is a tongue twister. This story is a Beauty and the Beast retelling about a girl named Feyre who is a hunter, and she kills a wolf and suddenly finds herself being dragged into this other world as retribution for killing that wolf. She finds herself being captured by this fairy named Tamlin, and as Beauty and the Beast tradition would suggest, she seems to fall in love with him. But this shadow sweeps over the fairy world, and she finds that she has to stop it or see the consequences affect Tamlin. I decided to read this book for October, even though it is not spooky, or I don't know, it might be. But I chose to read it for October because in November I am participating in NaNoWriMo. If you want to see that announcement video, I'll leave that link below as well. I wanted to read this book as a little bit of inspiration for world building. It's one thing that I'm not super confident in. It's something I haven't really tried. I've always kind of stopped myself because it's so all-encompassing, it feels like. So I thought this might be a good place to kind of look for just some inspiration of what kind of details and things get put into a story by an author. And I heard that she's really good at world building in this book. Alright, now for the spooky books. So I announced in my other video that I'm going to be participating in Read by Zoe's 24-hour readathon, and she's doing all Halloween-themed spooky books, and when I heard that, I was like, yes, please, sign me up. I want to read all the spooky books. So that's what I did. I got a really big pile of spooky books, in fact. So the first one on my list is Different Seasons by Stephen King. So this is a set of 4 short stories, or novellas, but they include some really big ones that have been adapted to movies. So there's Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption, obviously a large movie. Apt Pupil. The Breathing Method is the only one I haven't heard of. I don't know if it's been turned into a movie. I'm only going to read one story for this, and that is The Body, which the movie Stand By Me is based on. Stand By Me is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I have been wanting to read the book forever. So I said, there's no more excuses. It's a short story, so you can totally do it, and coincidentally, it just happens to be the autumn season book. So it is super appropriate to be reading right now. And I think what I'm going to be doing with it is read each story in the season it takes place over the next year. So I will have a lot of Stephen King to enjoy for the next year. The next one is an audiobook, also Stephen King. I have really surrounded myself by it over the past month. We went and saw the remake first, and then I was interested enough that we watched the original with Tim Curry, and man, that movie is really dated. But I'm still really intrigued by the story, especially because like, I've talked to my friend Freddie, who it's like his favorite book. He's read it a bunch of times, and I feel like there's just a lot in the story that's missing from the movie that you just can't adapt. There's some things that they don't want to get into, like Stephen King's whole universe of the turtle, if you know about his turtle, and then the kind of being that it is. They didn't really dive into it, but we'll see what they do with the sequel. So I just want to know more about this story. It's really fascinating to me. So I want to know what the whole thing is like. Next on my list is Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. Now this is the sequel to Stalking Jack the Ripper. I only gave that book about a 3-star, but the ending really appealed to me, and I really love the main characters, Audrey Rose, especially Thomas Cresswell. I'm kind of here at this point for Thomas Cresswell. But this one sounds so interesting that Audrey Rose and Thomas travel to Europe's most prestigious forensic school, and it just happens to be in the castle that Vlad the Impaler lived in. And then a bunch of mysterious deaths arise, and there's some rumors that it might be Vlad himself. So, of course, Audrey Rose and Thomas take it upon themselves to find the source of the murders. Stalking Jack the Ripper was based on real history, so I'm curious to see how the history versus supernatural plays out, because obviously, I mean, she's got a stake, so I'm assuming actual vampire lore comes into it, and it's not just the historical Vlad the Impaler, and it's going to have to do with Prince Dracula. So we'll see. I want to see how it ties in, and I want some more Thomas Cresswell, man. Next on my list is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. So I bought this book last year, and I meant to read it for Halloween, and I just didn't read anything. So I am going to read it, gosh darn it. So the premise is pretty simple. This carnival rolls into town, and it's very mysterious and sinister, and two boys end up going on an adventure uncovering its secrets. It just sounds so autumnal. Like, I know Halloween, obviously, but reading it, the synopsis just makes me feel like warm and cozy, even though it's supposed to be creepy, but I feel like leaves are littered on the ground and it's cool outside and almost time to go trick-or-treating, and just that time where sunset is the most beautiful time of the day. If you couldn't tell, autumn is my favorite season. I feel like this book was just made for me and my love of autumn, so I'm really excited to get into this one. Another selection for the 24-hour readathon, if I have time, is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It is just one of those classics that I feel like I should know. I love Frankenstein. I've seen the original black and white silent film from the first Universal monster movie. I've seen the Kenneth Branagh remake, which is fantastic. I love even Victor Frankenstein with James McAvoy. I just love any telling of the Frankenstein story. So I feel like I should read the original source. I can't wait to finally read this classic. I feel like I need to try to push myself to read more classics because there's so many that I have not read. It's really sad. So I'm going to change that, starting with Frankenstein. So for the readathon, I'm going to try 2 novels if I can get through them and still have some time left over. I'm looking for some short stories like The Body, but I also want to do some classics that you should really know. So who better to read at Halloween time than Edgar Allan Poe? So this is the complete works of Poe. And I don't know specifically what story I'm going to read, honestly. I've read a few in school, so I'll probably read something different. We'll see what inspires me at the time. I want to be a little spur of the moment. And then, in the same vein, I'm also going to pick up at least one short story out of the best of H.P. Lovecraft. I know a lot about Lovecraft lore for someone who has never read a single piece of his writing. I've played Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Cthulhu Wars, Arkham Horror card game, Cthulhu Gloom, and there's so many Cthulhu games out there, and I've played a lot of them. Dustin, my boyfriend, is a huge Lovecraft fan, so I've really been surrounded by it, so I figured it's time to actually expose myself to the original stories. And I'm reading Afterlife with Archie by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa and Francesco Francavilla. I'm so sorry, I'm sure I butchered those. But this is a story of Jughead leading an uprising of the dead, and Archie and the gang has to fight for their lives and try to stop them. I read the first issue of this book a while back, around the time when it first came out, and I absolutely loved it. But they lost their pace with releasing it, so I wasn't able to keep up with it, unfortunately. But now it's in a beautiful trade paperback, so I get multiple issues at once, and I can consume them all. Story time. When I was in elementary school, it was actually, like, the way to fit in was to read Archie comics. I kid you not. Everybody read comics. I basically started reading the Archie comics just to, like, try to fit in, because I was, you know, kind of the kid that didn't have very many friends. But I just ended up falling in love with them. I read them all the time. And it's been a little while since I've read Archie comics, but watching Riverdale has really sparked that love for Archie back in me. So I'm really you're gonna see probably a lot of Archie stuff coming up over the next months. Afterlife with Archie, it's gonna be good times for the month of October. So that's going to do it for my October TBR. Please let me know what books you are reading for the month of October, especially if they're spooky. I would love more recommendations. I'm sure I won't be able to add any more this month, but I am always adding some to my list for future because I love October, I love Halloween, and I love horror, so keep the recommendations coming. So that's going to do it for this video, and if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, like this video, and click that bell so you can get notifications of when my videos come out. And until my next video, I will see you soon.